We are here again. It's interesting because I feel like I'm finally getting back to um, recording this at a cadence. I think this is the second week back from the mini hiatus, but it's always good to see and hear and um, exchange ideas with you guys. And I'm saying that because yes, this is not a real time conversation, but I see your comments and your feedback, and it's inspiring for me. It is motivating because it allows at least I know that these conversations don't fall on deaf ears, and it means something to somebody outside of myself. Um, with that said, I want to start off like how we always start with an exercise in mindfulness. And how we do that is just focusing on our breath for 10 seconds, starting now. And what we generally do is after that is get ourselves present in the moment, and then start off with a a puzzle of some sort. And I have one. It's a little longer than normal, so I'm reading it, and it's I can't be bought, but I can be stolen with a glance. I'm worthless to one, but priceless to two. What am I? I'll say it again. I can't be bought, but I can be stolen with a glance. I'm worthless to one, but priceless to two. What am I? Today's conversation is going to be a little interesting. I think, as always, I'm going to hopefully add my personal anecdote. But I was on the internet like I always do. I live and I work on the internet, but I stumbled upon an article, and the title of the article was "Must I Choose My Wife or My Muse?" And I don't necessarily have to go into much detail of the context of the article, but just let me frame it for you. Um, this man is uber creative, and um, he he gets inspiration from women, and he fell in love with his now wife, but later found that she wasn't a source of inspiration for him the way that these other women were, and then he was trapped between choosing her or choosing them. And I want to say that I understand it on a deeper level, or with some level of depth, because being a creative myself, and also getting inspiration from feminine energy, and just being around femininity, I completely understand. Um, and it's weird because I didn't understand why or how it was possible. And these were, just to add context, these are women that I don't necessarily have a romantic relationship with, but just being around femininity for some reason has been a source of inspiration for me for a long time, ever since I was conscious of this creative process of mine. And I used to say it a lot, and it wasn't until I read a book, The Way of a Superior Man, and understand the relationship of masculine and feminine energy, and how the dynamics of them both, and the importance of them both, that I started to understand what was happening and why it was happening. But I'm saying that to say that romantic relationships do, in fact, impact your creativity. And to some level, and it varies the level of impact, in bliss, in a situation where it amplifies your creativity. Um, there is a scenario where your partner is in fact your muse, is the source of your inspiration. And that same partner that you found love in allows you to, one, exude that love into art. That same partner, we talked about the vulnerability of creativity, how artists need spaces where they're comfortable enough to create these works of art. And in order to do so, the person who, in theory, is the closest to you, and who you exchange energies with, however frequent, should, in a perfect world, help create that space for you. Be supportive in that journey, in that creative journey, in that creative process, and almost create a space where not only you're supported, not only is it facilitated, but you together have created spaces where you can collaborate and then jointly produce amazing art. And I think for a lot of us, when we talk about finding love and finding the right person and finding all these things in this storybook, in this fairy tale type of narrative, that would be the ideal situation. Unfortunately, for a lot of us, it is not. There's also this idea that opposites attract, right? And there's an instance where uber creative people are attracted to someone who isn't necessarily living within their creativity. And I want to say that most, if not all, of my relationships are the latter. It's I've never seen or used or had the opportunity to see my partner as my muse. And I'm conscious of that. And it's because, unlike a lot of creative people, I've never mixed the two. But not because I didn't want to, it's because how I've always viewed relationships. And I don't know that's the best way to view it, but for me, I've always seen the woman that I've chose to have a romantic relationship with as a blank canvas and an opportunity to create art from. And art in the sense of innovation, improvement, and just, I don't know. I have a thing where I always want to see people better than, I want to leave them better than they were before they met me. And that's across the board. But in relationships, I'm a little more hands-on. And there's some intentionality there. And I don't know that it has benefited me or... I would think that they're benefiting from it, but again, that's a biased opinion because in that same moment when I'm thinking that, they become better person. I think it's at the expense of the relationship, because at some point there's almost this realization that it feels more like a project than it does an actual relationship. And because of my relationship with creativity and art and how passionate I am about it, I feel like I'm getting fulfillment from it, but I'm not sure she is. And I've never really said that out loud. But now that I have, I think it's an interesting revelation of my own. And I get so much satisfaction from creating things, from innovating, from building, from seeing the world and people as they should be, as opposed to how they are. And then the process of that transition process has always been fulfilling to me. And now I understand why I've never had a muse as a romantic partner. Because if a muse is, in theory, how I'm defining in my head, this idea of someone that inspires you to want to create, that energizes you, that just allows you to come up with amazing ideas. Then I don't know that those are the things I intentionally looked for in a partner. History, in my own relationship history, when I would come across women who would inspire me, who I would consider my muse, I just wanted them to be around. I didn't care to have, I didn't want to jeopardize or compromise this creative, this idea, this inspiration source. So I would leave it. I would keep it close enough where I can get the inspiration, but never kind of crossed over that line. And it was something that I can appreciate from a distance. And I never really thought about it like that. Because coming into this conversation, I was thinking, to this point, I've always been my most creative when I was either single or going through some kind of friction or turmoil within my relationship. And if I look back, the best work that I've ever created has been in one of those particular moments. And I'm that's not unique to me. I mean, there are artists and musicians and singers and songwriters who write amazing work, which is resulting from a breakup or kind of an experience, a toxic experience within their own relationships. I know some fans champion breakups for some artists because they know the work that comes from it. But I used to always see relationships, because of this pattern that I would notice within myself. I saw relationships as a distraction. And now that I'm thinking about it, it's partly because I was, instead of finding my muse to be my inspiration, to be my safe space, uh, to be this source of of creative inspiration, I was merely just looking for another outlet for my creativity. And because of that, that is what most of my relationships were. Um, in times past, I would hear that um, it you my relationship would be in jeopardy if I were to meet somebody as creative as me, because of how much creativity is a part of my life, and my partners would feel threatened by that. But again, I never sought after creative inspiration. I felt like I could. I mean, we talked about it on multiple occasions, where I go for my own inspiration: darkness and travel. Um, but I don't know. I think because of how uh, self sufficient and self empowering my creativity is, I don't know that. Could I could I uh, be in a romantic relationship with my muse? I don't know. I think that would be a powerful combination, because to this point, again, I keep saying this, but, and it's only because I'm honestly having a revelation at this moment. um, most of my relationships have been threatened by my creativity. And it hasn't, my creativity or problem solving haven't, it is, yes, has been helpful in aspects of life, that both myself and my partner would and ultimately benefit from. But in the dynamics of the relationship directly, like in disagreements and arguments where it's an opportunity to help solve a problem, I don't know that my creativity has ever helped that particular situation. I think what has is my like emotional intelligence, because unlike creativity, we talked about this process of there's an emotional component associated with it. There's feelings, being in tune with the human side and empathy. But at some point, how you measure the success of whatever project or problem you solve is whether how effective the solution is. But in relationships, that emotional and the feelings component of it is ever present. There's never a moment where you that goes out the window and you just focus on the solution. And I think somebody in that moment has to compromise and exercise their emotional intelligence to say, like, hey, you know what, I'll take a loss this time. And it does. I'm saying a loss because I can't think of a better word to describe it. But I'll fall back. I will. I'll. It always comes back to defeat, but I don't want it to make it a win-loss thing. I really, I really came in here and I was gonna highlight the benefits of finding love in your partner, and that love showcasing itself or be translated into your art. I was going to talk about the safe space that it allows, a healthy relationship allows. And then that love and the passion, and those are two components of creativity that you can feel it in the art that comes from it. Being with somebody in the emotional depth and this roller coaster ride of emotions, that is significantly impactful to art and creativity. And if you're able to get that in a healthy way in a relationship, I think that's remarkable. And I think for a lot of us, I think that is what we would want, like the hope that we can find that person that it gets that out of us, or creates that space for us. But in reality, there are a lot of relationships that are draining. It's unsupportive. It's a distraction. And I used to always think that. Because of I was my most creative self when I was, again, single or going through some turmoil. I saw relationships at one point as distractions, because when I was in them, it was almost like there was a glass ceiling that I couldn't go beyond. I always had to think, how is this going to impact this person? What should I do different? Because I don't want them to feel, or I don't want them to do, or I don't want to interpret it wrong. And art is up for interpretation. And it's like, there was so much going through my head. And the art that I was creating in the midst of these relationships, it was, if I'm honest, it wasn't my best work. I've created pieces, and then later on had romantic partners look at it, and they even though she weren't there in the moment I was creating that art, feel slighted because of who the art was inspired by. And a lot of times I would like hide art. And I'm saying art because, again, it's not one thing. It's just it showcases itself in many different ways. But this has been an interesting episode. I think hearing myself say the things that I've said and being conscious of it and hearing it out loud, which I don't think that I've ever said it out loud. Like, these thoughts always happen in my head, but to say it out loud, to say that, my partner has never been my muse, but it's no fault of her own. It's because I never wanted my muse to be my partner. I've always wanted my partner to be a blank canvas, which meant my relationships in times past were projects. And that was the purpose of it, another outlet for my creativity. But it's scary to think, to be involved romantically with somebody who I get so much inspiration from. So much, like, that creates a space for me to be creative and welcomes it constantly with a mind like mine. That's even scarier. Listen, I have some conversations to have with myself. A revelation that I need to explore further. And I'm conscious of a lot more now than I was coming into this. I want to say this, just to go back to how we ended this, or how we started this. I want to end it with I guess the riddle or the brain teaser. The question was, I can't be bought, but I can be stolen with a glance. I'm worthless to one, but priceless to two. Who am I? I am love. That is who I am. I am love. It was a pleasure, as always. I enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for allowing me the space to have it. As always, go be great.